The sanctity of human life is under assault. Find out how and what you can do about it in this edition of Life Matters with Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives. As California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. He is an author and lecturer, a film producer, and commentator. And now, Commissioner Johnston.
Well, hello and welcome back to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brian Johnston, and on Life Matters, we talk about life, we talk about culture, and perhaps most importantly, we talk about the very real battle of ideas. It's swirling around you every day, and if you're not ready for it, you can lose in this battle, and the cost can be great. Today, we're going to discuss some very important issues, and we're going to help equip you to deal with aspects of the abortion debate. Now, when we talk about abortion, there's almost always going to be emotions involved, and on both sides of the issue. What we want to do is we want to help equip you to cut through the very thick fog that emotions can bring to any debate. We're going to talk about some very specific details of the law that you may not be aware of. And we're going to have a great interview with a good friend of mine, the president of the National Right to Life Committee, and that's Carol Tobias. So we've got a lot to do today. And I want to help you make sure that you're able to deal with the objective facts of what's really coming at us. Do you hear that? Do you hear what they're saying? These are advocates of abortion, and what they're implying is two things: that this is a debate about a woman's body, but there's also something else. They're implying that if you disagree with them on abortion, it has to do with your church. If you've heard our program before, you know that your church may agree that abortion is wrong, but that doesn't make the issue about your church. It doesn't make the issue about your particular theology. This is about objective facts. This is about natural law, which indicates this is a human being. And when the laws were put in place regarding abortion, it was on the basis of natural law, the laws of nature and of nature's God. Science is very clear on when human life begins, and the nature of this child, in fact, is reinforcing the uniqueness of this child. Every day there's more breaking news. Just at the end of last year, scientists declared that they could now hear the heartbeat 16 days after conception. Before that, it had been 18. Before that, it had been 21. So our technology is what's catching up to the very clear objective fact. This is a unique child that's genetically unique. This child has a genetic signature that's never before existed in the history of mankind. The 23 chromosomes from the mother, the 23 from the father, have come together and created a unique human person. That's what you are. That's what each of your cells declares. Your uniqueness, that God made you unique. That's what the founders literally put into. They didn't know that part, but they still put it into our founding documents, that each individual is created equal and endowed by their Creator with their rights, not endowed by the rights from the government. So a just government must make sure that it protects the rights of the vulnerable. Now, when we talk about this whole issue, we have to look at an important decision. That's the Roe v. Wade decision. And we're going to look at the legal aspects of Roe v. Wade. We're going to go over what it actually did. You may not know the specific details. I'm going to literally read to you from portions of Roe and the twin decision that came down on January 22nd, 1973, the companion decision of Doe v. Bolton. Together, they struck down every law in every state that had been protecting children. And when you hear the legal implications of what was literally said and the reverberation through our culture, which you're now seeing, you're going to understand why we've got to overturn those decisions. So in just a little bit, we're going to go into greater details of the law. I'm going to try to not let it be dry. A lot of times people talk about laws and it can be very dry. No, this is very important. It's very real. It really does directly impact you and your culture around you, the society that's around you every day. And in California, you're paying for the abortion culture that we're living in. So do pay attention. We're going to be right back in just a little bit.
You're listening to Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, hi. I just wanted to thank you for joining me. You know, I have good friends, children, young adults, and adults that have Down syndrome. And they are so loved. Their parents love them so much because they're the happiest people you'd ever want to know. I really love them. I'm going to tell you something, though, that's rather frightening. The government of France has now prohibited showing positive images of Down syndrome children and letting parents know how lovable they are. That's an actual law in France. Here in the U.S., 80-some-odd% of Down syndrome kids are killed by abortion before they're born. In France, it's 96%. So we're not a whole lot better. If you'd like to help out, you can go to the National Down Syndrome Society, ndss.org, to help out. That's ndss.org. We really are in a battle of ideas, and lives really are at stake.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brian Johnston. In this show, we talk about life, we talk about culture, and we talk about the battle of ideas and how it impacts you. It's really about you. So today, we're going to be talking about Roe v. Wade. I'm going to read to you aspects of the decision. And yes, it does apply to every state and every abortion, but it actually applies to the culture you live in, to the society you participate in, and there's positive things that you can do to address this. So let me talk a little bit about the Roe versus Wade decision, and you'll hear a very famous phrase. You'll hear it said a lot, that we want to protect the health of the mother. Now note, they don't say the life of the mother, but the health. And this is a very important term, and literally Roe v. Wade did define it, and Doe v. Bolton did define it. And when you understand what these decisions say, you'll understand the incredible sweeping reach. So in discussing abortion and abortion for the mother's health, it's absolutely crucial to know what health means legally and in practice regarding abortion. Health was defined in detail by the U.S. Supreme Court when they said that abortion could be performed, quote, in the light of all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patient. All these factors may relate to health. And that's a direct quote from Roe v. Wade. And in its companion decision, Doe v. Bolton said this: maternity or additional offspring may force upon the woman a distressful life and future. Psychological harm may be imminent. Mental and physical health may be taxed by child care. There is also the distress for all concerned associated with the unwanted child. And there is the problem of bringing a child into a family already unable, psychologically or otherwise, to care for it. Close quote. That's from Doe versus Bolton. Now note what they say about societal and psychological and the ability to pay for the child. This is clearly social engineering regarding a human life they don't know anything about. And some of our greatest leaders, heroes, and individuals have come from very impoverished backgrounds, have been illegitimate children. Some think that Abraham Lincoln may, in fact, have been illegitimate, but there's many others. No, this is a very sweeping decision when it defines health in that matter. In a concurring opinion, Justice Douglas went even further, and he elaborated what health meant when in law it related to abortion. He detailed that if she had to, quote, endure the discomforts of pregnancy, to incur the pain, the higher mortality rate and after effects of childbirth, to abandon educational plans, or to sustain loss of income, to forgo the satisfactions of careers, to tax further mental and physical health by providing childcare, and in some cases to bear the lifelong stigma of unwed motherhood, close quote. And again, that's from the Roe versus Wade statement by Justice Douglas in 1973. This definition of health has been adopted internationally. As a result, in any nation, if abortion is allowed for the woman's health, that country permits abortion on demand unless other aspects of its laws add clearer restrictions. The World Health Organization of the United Nations defined it as including social, emotional, and economic well-being of the woman as defined by the woman herself. That's called choice, abortion on demand. I just want it. I'm uncomfortable. That is sufficient in the definition of health. Now, some of those reasons are sounding as if they may be important. If she's unmarried, well, that's sufficient. But I know many mothers who were single mothers. And later on in Life Matters, we're going to have some interviews with some amazing women. And they'll tell you that by keeping their child, it transformed their life dramatically. It was so beneficial to understand what motherhood is. And you'll enjoy that interview with that young woman who has since grown up and her child has grown up. But there's so many other options. It's not just keeping the child. And there's so many ways that child can be cared for. As I said, every child is a wanted child. There are so many young couples waiting to adopt and they can't. And again, it's not just the perfect child. There are many couples that'll adopt any child. Children with disabilities. There are people who will care for that child. So when you look at how health has been defined, when you look at how the Roe v. Wade decision became so broad and defines health as basically a frame of mind at the moment, the great danger that comes is that now there's no legal protection for that child, and that the physician or anyone else that counsels that woman can easily guide her into an abortion on demand for any reason, or for no reason in particular. Roe is extremely dangerous and must be overturned. Now, the Roe versus Wade decision was upheld in two subsequent decisions, the Casey decision and the Webster decision. In her dissent with upholding Roe, Sandra Day O'Connor was very clear. She said Roe versus Wade has no foundation in law or logic. It's on a collision course with itself. Let me tell you more about Roe that's still standing and been upheld. It created a new basic constitutional right for women in the right to privacy. Again, in another program, we talk about that right to privacy supposedly emanates from a penumbra of the Constitution. Justice Blackmun said it wasn't in the Constitution. It emanated from what is almost a shadow, a very strange term. But it said that this right was created and was broad enough to encompass a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy. It stated that the law protects only legal persons and that legal personhood does not exist prenatally. It authorized no legal restrictions on abortion in the first 3 months at all, no restrictions from then until viability except those needed to make the procedure safer for the mother. And then abortion was allowed until birth if one licensed physician judged it necessary for the mother's health. We just talked about how they defined health. It, in essence, said abortion on demand should be available throughout the length of the pregnancy. Let me quote to you because this was so alarming and indeed is very alarming. There are late-term abortions being done. You know that. Partial birth abortion and other forms of abortion are done late in pregnancy. The Senate Judiciary Committee had a hearing on this, and I'll read to you from that hearing in 1983. This is what they said. Thus, the Judiciary Committee observes that no significant legal barriers of any kind whatsoever exist today in the United States for a woman to obtain an abortion for any reason during any stage of her pregnancy. Roe is very sweeping, and as Sandra Day O'Connor said, it has no foundation in law or logic, and it's on a collision course with itself. There have been some subsequent decisions, and there have been some subsequent state laws that are now making their way up to the Supreme Court. In a moment, we're going to hear from Carol Tobias of the National Right to Life Committee, and she'll describe some of those laws that are going to start putting some kind of restriction now on Roe v. Wade, and if they're upheld, they'll overturn Roe, and we'll start seeing some real protection for children again. But those have yet to get to the court. So we want to make sure that you understand this and why there are so many citizens today upset about the Roe v. Wade decision, and will march and talk about it. But most importantly, we have to work to change it to make sure that our states will protect these children and that our government will not finance and put its hand to the abortion plow. We want to make sure that this is not something that we continue to promote as a lifestyle, because it's not. It only brings harm. It only brings death. And there are such better answers than abortion. Very excited to let you know that I had a chance to meet with Carol Tobias a while ago, and I had my tape recorder with me, so I was able to pull her aside, and I got a great interview with her. You're going to hear from her in just a second.
Life Matters continues after this.
Well, hi. I just wanted to thank you for joining me. You know, I have good friends, children, young adults, and adults that have Down syndrome. And they are so loved. Their parents love them so much because they're the happiest people you'd ever want to know. I really love them. I'm going to tell you something, though, that's rather frightening. The government of France has now prohibited showing positive images of Down syndrome children and letting parents know how lovable they are. That's an actual law in France. Here in the U.S., 80-some-odd% of Down syndrome kids are killed by abortion before they're born. In France, it's 96%. So we're not a whole lot better. If you'd like to help out, you can go to the National Down Syndrome Society, ndss.org, to help out. That's ndss.org. We really are in a battle of ideas, and lives really are at stake.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston and a very special guest.
So hi, Brian Johnston here with Life Matters, and I had mentioned to you before I was going to try to get Carol Tobias back again. I was able to do that. So we're very pleased to have Carol Tobias, the president of the National Right to Life Committee, with us today. Carol, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. We know one of the reasons I wanted to have you back was because I think a lot of people don't fully understand what the Right to Life movement is and why it needs to have some structure and focus. And the way National Right to Life is structured is specifically along the lines of what our founding fathers gave us, an opportunity to impact the law, to address the laws as citizens, and that's what we are as a 501c4, addressing the law. But there's many other aspects of National Right to Life that people need to know, and then they need to know how they can be involved. So let's talk about that.
I'd love to, because I love National Right to Life. Mm-hmm. The organization was actually started by some people in 1968 who kind of saw what was happening around the country. Several state legislatures had tried to change their laws to legalize abortion, and some very intelligent and prescient people decided to get together and say, we need to do something to stop this. And that actually was the beginning of National Right to Life several years before the Supreme Court decision in 1973, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, which legalized abortion on demand for any reason for all 9 months of pregnancy, overturning the laws in all 50 states. National Right to Life now is an organization of 50 state groups. We have an affiliate in every state. and those affiliates have chapters that work in their local communities. So we focus on, of course, education. We need to reach out to our neighbors, our family, friends, co-workers, fellow church members, to make sure that they understand what is happening in this country, that more than 1 million unborn children are being killed by abortion every year. We also work in the political and legislative arena. We need to change the law to protect the babies. So we do that by electing good men and women who will vote for legislation to try to stop abortion. Now, unfortunately, some of the laws that are passed go up before a court and they get struck down, but we have been successful in passing many laws that are making a difference. Tax dollars are used very rarely to pay for abortion. Some states will use
California.
Yeah, some states use their own money, but federal money cannot be used to pay for abortion except in very rare cases. We've got a lot of state laws that say the women have to be given specific information about abortion, about alternatives that are available, about the possible complications that could arise from the abortion. We now have 14 states that have passed a law that said once that child has reached the stage of development that the baby can feel pain, the abortion cannot be performed. We have 6 states now that say you cannot use the dismemberment abortion procedure. It's a gruesome procedure used most commonly in the second trimester, which basically pulls the arms and the legs off of the baby's body, and then they crush the body and crush the head to remove the baby. So we've been able to pass some laws that will save the babies. But unfortunately, we need to do more, and we need to do everything we can to save every precious life.
That's right. And that's why I was drawn years ago to National Right to Life, because it understood that you need a team, that this is such a vast challenge. Obviously, in the national level, you are regularly in Washington, D.C., and it's not to live in the lap of luxury. Anyone who's worked with National Right to Life or worked in pro-life efforts knows that dollars are stretched. And we have to be in Washington, though. The reason we're in Washington is that's where our federal laws are made. But because of what our nation is, those federal representatives come from each and every state. You call them members of Congress. In each of our states, and that's the power, is your state affiliates. Wherever you are, whatever state you're in California, it's the California Pro-Life Council. But the California Pro-Life Council just doesn't do its own thing. California Pro-Life Council is a team of people, diverse people from different religious backgrounds with different interests, but they've decided to set aside other interests, recognizing the importance of the right to life. So National Right to Life has allowed us in California to use those efforts in California to work with the bigger team. And so often I see in the pro-life movement the tendency, I was involved in starting a crisis pregnancy center years ago. Wonderful thing. I'm not bragging or shining my shoes, but I know out of our personal family income, we've given thousands upon thousands of dollars over the years to crisis pregnancy centers. That's great. That's a good thing. But I have to tell you, that doesn't stop abortions. That helps that particular child, and that's a good thing. Those of you of religious background know that that's a work of corporal mercy. You're helping that young mother and you're helping that child. That's a good thing. But that's a work of corporal mercy. It doesn't change the laws at all. And the crime, if you will, that was committed in 73 of the courts is the laws that are supposed to protect lives were removed. And if we ignore that, if you're ignoring that, then you're ignoring the most important aspect of this debate and how we're going to stop the killing. In slavery, there were people who said, look, we hate slavery, it's evil. They were opposed. If you look at the history, the Whig Party actually opposed slavery. So we're not going to allow slavery in the North at all. But the reality is that slavery was an evil. And if you're not working to end it, and that's what started the Republican Party. Most of them were Whigs, and they said, no, we've got to end slavery. And if you're not willing to end this, please don't be a Whig. I'm sorry. But you have to work to end this, and that means you have to work with a bigger team. National and state affiliates are so important.
They really are, because we have that local presence in so many of our smaller communities, smaller and bigger communities around the country. There's a chapter of Right to Life, whether it's National Right to Life or our state affiliate, working to not only educate their community, but to elect men and women who will work to pass laws. The law is twofold. One, of course, it can be used to protect life. It's also an educational tool because so many people are going to think, well, if it's legal, it must be right, it must be okay.
That's right.
So if we can say, no, abortion isn't legal because it isn't right, that in itself can actually be an educational tool as well.
Oh, hugely. And if you're only inclined towards education, you need to understand that is what's allowing, just as with slavery. Unfortunately, people have told me, I agree, sex slavery is happening apparently in the U.S. There's a sex trade. I agree that's morally wrong, but that's illegal. That's illegal. And so slavery, even sex slavery, it's evil, but the scale is so much smaller because the law said the police are going to stop you. And we want policemen stopping abortionists. That's our ultimate goal. That's the only way ultimately. And that does happen and will happen. And we saw that with Gosnell in Philadelphia. It's important that we stop these children being harmed.
And we stop the abortionists from performing it. If we say it's illegal, they're not going to be able to stay in business because they will not have the business to keep their lucrative planes and big houses.
That's right. And those of you, those children are wanted children, by the way. So at the moment, maybe someone is under pressure, but any child you know of, and you can contact National Right to Life, there are people out there that will adopt children with disabilities. Every child is a wanted child. That's how society is designed. We have lost that principle, and if we make it legal and continue to allow it to be legal, then children will continue to be killed. National Right to Life is dedicated to bringing an end to abortion.
And for anyone who wants more information, our website is nrlc.org, because we are the National Right to Life Committee.
Wonderful. Carol, thank you so much for coming back.
My pleasure.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Listen to more Life Matters every Saturday at 1 p.m. right here on KCBC.